Good morning. Hey, it's Henry again. Talking about psych. Let's talk about psych. The last time we actually met, what I did was I took you through a journey on how I became a nurse. Took you through the whole process of being able to start a community college nursing process, which allowed me to be able to become a psychiatric nurse practitioner. So let's talk about the second phase of the process. In the last video, what I talked about were the challenges that were particularly unique for me in becoming an RN. And let me say this, the RN degree was the most challenging degree that I ever experienced. If you want to see some really difficult processes, if you want to see the analogy that nurses eat their young, community college is the way to go. Community college was an excellent experience though, because with community college nursing, there's a process called the clinical rotation. What do you mean by that, Henry? Clinical rotation is when you're actually there doing different sites. So we had, of course, med surge every year because we did it for 2 years. So traditional semester, 16 weeks. So we did it for first semester, second, third, and fourth. Every semester we had a community, a nursing rotation called med surge. I mentioned community. Community nursing was the process in which you went out and did the different entities, like you'll see, your community-based services. There's also a process where we went through pediatrics. There's also labor and delivery. There was also a psych rotation, which was the most exciting for me. And what made psych so exciting for me during that rotation was simply every rotation that we went on, there was always just that excitement for me of going in because there was such a vast diversity of people who were suffering from mental illness. You had the adolescents, you had the adults, you had the geriatric population. So what I saw in that was anybody could suffer from mental illness. Anybody could be suffering from mental illness. What do I mean, anybody? Anyone can suffer from mental illness because here's the reality of what happens. Mental illness isn't specific to any specific individual or group. Every culture has their own series of mental health. Now, there are some mental healths that are more prominent to certain economic or certain social classes. I do believe that. And when I say social and economic, I just mean the way their access to mental health services. So some things may go undiagnosed, untreated, or even unacknowledged because of a lack of understanding and a lack of resources to be able to catch these things early on. An example of that would be ADHD is very prevalent in the community. Well, here's the thing with ADHD. When you do an initial assessment, did you sit down and ask your child or ask the child, what did they eat for breakfast? A good assessment is going to be, what did they eat for breakfast? Because if they're bouncing off the walls during the assessment, the possible reason may be they're eating cereal. And when you say cereal, you mean a big bowl, like a mayonnaise bowl, and they're using it. That could be based off of socioeconomic rationing, where they use that sort of cereal, which is very sweet because it's cheaper. Or if they use those big bowls, because again, they're cheaper because I'm eating out of plastic because I'm always on the go, instead of being able to do the dishes and throw those kind of things into the understanding of the patient when you're doing the assessment. So that's what I loved about psych. Again, we had an option of several different sites. In Delaware, we're very limited to what type of psychiatric facilities we have. So we only have, I want to say, 3 in Wilmington, maybe 4 in Wilmington. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 in Dover, and then there's maybe a handful down in Lower Delaware. So we're actually using the Lower Peninsula to look at some possible Maryland connections that they may have with those who are providing services. So it was a very unique experience for me. So one of the things I walked away with was an understanding that an associate level nurse, which is a community college nurse, again, one of the best things I've done because of the hands-on experience I had walking into any job that I walked into. I had hands-on experience. I knew what it was I was going to do. Well, I also found out that a 2-year nurse, and if you're wanting working with a higher level of nursing, such as a Magna status. What's Magna status? Magna status is a grading that is given to hospitals if their nurses have at least a bachelor's degree education. So what does that mean? That means I was thinking, okay, I'm an RN. It's an RN is an RN, correct? No, an RN is not just an RN. You have associate level RNs, and you also have bachelor's level RNs. What do you mean by that, Henry? What I mean is this. Some people go to Delaware State University. Some people went to the University of Delaware. Some people went to Wilmington College, Wesley College, whatever college it may have been, but those were primarily the colleges that were in my area. So you had to go there, but you may have started there and just went straight through and got your undergrad as a bachelor's degree. So you never had an RN at an associate level. You got your bachelor's degree and you're a bachelor's level RN. The way NCLEX, which is a test that is required in order to become a registered nurse, the requirements educationally are an associate degree or a bachelor's degree. So those individuals who graduate with a bachelor's degree and not a community college associate degree, because you can only get a community college associate degree from a community college. You can only get from a community college associate degree. Bachelor's degree, you have to go to a university. The reason why I went to the associate level is, again, because, as I said in my last video, they were easier to teach you. They taught you the basics and you were able to build up, because I had been out of school for years, a lot of years. And so revisiting college was a real challenge for me. So to walk into a 4-year college wasn't necessarily something I thought I would be able to do. But guess what? It was something that I was able to do as time went along, which is what we're talking about today. But initially, the community college was a better way for me because there was a lot more manageable workings for adults. I was an adult. I had a couple kids. I had a home. I really, I wasn't going to live on campus. This wasn't my only thing that I did all day. I was still working. I still had bills to pay, car note, mortgage. I had a bunch of other life situations that were coming up. So there was no way I could go to a 4-year college and live on campus. So what I did was a community college, but after I got my associate degree, then I was able to go, and I usually took night courses, meaning I had to work. So when I got off work, I took classes. I literally drove from Wilmington to Dover. If you don't know that distance, think about an hour with good traffic, 3 days a week, driving back and forth to Dover. So that was the challenge, but I was committed because I wanted to get this next level of education. As I said, options are with nursing unlimited. So let's say I wanted to work at the psych facility that was at our major hospital. Let's say I wanted to be able to do what I'm doing now. In order to get a master's degree, you have to get a bachelor's degree first. So in order to enhance my employment opportunities and in order to improve my educational mindset, I went and I did a bachelor's degree. One of the best experiences I've had. So I drove back and forth to Dover and I went to what's called Wilmington University. At that time it was called Wilmington College, but I went to Wilmington University. And I went there and I took the classes. Now, Wilmington bachelor's program was a lot different because I had already had the underpinning from Delaware Technical Community College as an RN. So a lot of what I learned in the bachelor's program was nurse as an educator, nurse as a teacher, nurse as an instructor, nursing as management. And of course, there was still a clinical rotation phase. It was much less. In my case, I had to go out into the community and network. So what I chose was an elderly population in Wilmington. I was able to go there and I was able to educate them on the symptoms and the common diagnoses within the facility. Of course, I was still a psych major, so I focused a lot on depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, those common mental health diagnoses. But I also looked at the common diagnosis with the elderly, which is diabetes, which can be hypertension, which can be high cholesterol, and which can be other comorbidities. So that was a really great experience because I became nurse as a teacher, and I understood that an RN is a leadership role. When you're in an RN, you're in a leadership role. So you have to be able to know the responsibilities that go with that and how exactly to be a leader. So there was also a course on how to be a manager. how to deal with subordinates, how to deal with being middle management. Because when you're an RN, you're usually going to step in as middle management. You're walking through the door, whether it's a 2-year or 4-year degree. So you're walking through the door with a lot of education, but not a lot of personal experience. Now, community college gave me a lot of hands-on experience, but just the experience of being designated in that role. So you may have the CNAs, you may have the LPNs, which are much more knowledgeable than a brand new RN. The LPNs are usually a lot more knowledgeable because when I walked in, most of what I learned as an RN was from LPNs. Now, here's the catch-22 with that. I'm a man who's working in a predominantly female field. So a lot of times I had good interactions with the LPN because I was humble, because I knew, one, through my education and through just through human nature, that people don't want you to be their leader and they're training you to do their job. One of the unique things about my experience was a lot of my leadership roles, I was trained by my subordinates. So imagine training your supervisor and then they are your supervisor. So you guys are actually like this. So here's the LPN, here's the RN, here's the LPN, because they have a wealth of knowledge and experience. But after they train you, then it balances out. Now you walk in like this, you're the leader, you have to humble yourself. So one of the things I did was, and this is just my perspective, I always feed people. So hey, listen, I need you to teach me this, to understand this. So I knew how to be a nurse, but how to be a nurse in this facility, how to be a nurse and conduct these types of tests and these requests and interactions with the doctors and submitting orders and how the paperwork ran and electronic record keeping. That was a lot. So even though, again, I was taught, you have to be taught the format for each facility. And that was usually done for me by the LPNs. Again, I'm a man, most of them were women, so I said, hey, listen, I understand that this is an awkward situation, and I always bought lunch. And I didn't do a cheap lunch either, whatever they had wanted. Because if you're giving someone, because you're gaining from them, I'm gaining insight, wisdom, knowledge, understanding. I'm not gonna minimize that with a hamburger. I'm not going to do that. Now, if they asked me for a McDonald's hamburger, I would give them a McDonald's hamburger. But if it was up to me, I was going to give them whatever it is they wanted because it was a wealth of knowledge. Because once you taught me, now I have this knowledge. Now I can move about. Now, again, because I had learned at Wilmington University, you got to be able to manage that because you can't come down to the level of a subordinate and then jump back up to a point of authority because then that leads to potential for what's called horizontal work harassment, horizontal work violence versus a lateral violence. Lateral violence is your coworkers not getting along and these are buddies with these people and they're clashing together. A lot of work went into that process. So I'll say this, I think it was very instrumental that I learned from a bachelor's perspective to understand that you need to have a working relationship because you're middle management. You got upper management's needs telling you what it is they need. You have direct care and then you're in the middle. But you can become direct care on any given day because you're short staffed and you may have to step up and be a potential acting director because they're in transition, especially with the more that you know. And again, that's where you'll see, again, the horizontal violence that you work with as well as the lateral violence that you will experience as a nurse. So it was a very unique and interesting experience. I'm really grateful for the opportunity. Again, I graduated from Wilmington University with my bachelor's degree. I had hands-on experience because I had worked. I got a job. I got my license. Today, hypothetically, I had a job tomorrow. That's the beauty of nursing. I went straight into work. Did the orientation, did the hands-on that they have to do, the trainings they teach you, and then I was at work. So I was on the payroll less than 2 weeks after graduating. So it was a very good experience. So I hope I've offered you guys some information or insight into what exactly it is with becoming an RN with a bachelor's degree. What I'm going to do in my next journey is I'm going to walk you what it's going to take in order to have a master's degree. So again, I hope you guys got some information from this. Understand that nursing is a very good field to be in, but understanding the journey is very important. And that's what I want to do. I want to help anyone who is gaining information from these videos on how to become an RN and what it was like for this particular RN.